Moin YouTube, it's time for another day trip. Husum, here I come. Yes, I did pick some interesting weather to come here, but then again, hey, this is Husum, one of its most famous inhabitants from the past has been the German novelist and poet Theodor Storm, and he dedicated a poem to this town in which he called it the grey town by the sea. Also, hey, it's late December in northern Germany, so grey is what you get most of the time. It didn't look any different when I started this trip in Hamburg. Very close to here, this river connects Husum to the North Sea, making sure that for a long time Husum actually enjoyed an existence as a major trading hub. But it wasn't always like that. After Theodor Storm called Husum the great town by the sea, people sometimes think of something gloomy, almost depressing. But I don't think he meant it that way. This grey isn't sad, it's concentrated. It's a color that belongs to wind, water, clouds, and thought. And nowhere does that feeling come together better than down here at the harbor. For centuries, this was Husum's connection to the outside world. Fish, cattle, grain, goods, people, everything passed through here. And with the North Sea right next door, everything that came also left again, with the next tide. You can feel how much the rhythm of this place is still tied to the water. Not dramatic, not romanticized, just a steady awareness that the sea is never far and never really under control. Walking along this harbor, it becomes very clear why writers, painters and poets felt at home here. This is not a loud landscape. It doesn't shout for attention. It waits until you slow down enough to listen. And once you do, you start to understand that Husum's history, its character, and even its calmness were all shaped by the same thing: the sea. When people first started settling in what is now Husum, for a very long time this was just a rather insignificant settlement. In 1362, however, something happened that for a lot of people was absolutely devastating. A major storm surge known as the Grote Mandränke, the Great Drowning. Whole areas of the mainland were torn off, became islands or disappeared completely, just became part of the North Sea. For this place, Husum, however, that meant that they suddenly found themselves just a few hundred meters off the coast. So what they did was build a harbor and a market square, and the heyday of Husum began. This is Wasserreihe, one of the oldest streets in Husum, and one of the most honest. For centuries, this was working Husum: fishermen, craftsmen, dock workers, small traders, people whose lives were tied directly to the harbor and the sea. Their houses had to be close to the water, because their work was close to the water. You can still see it in the buildings. Nothing monumental, nothing fancy, just practical, compact and built to last. Wasserreihe grew along the edge of the old harbor basin, long before Husum became the tidy little town it is today. When you walk through the street, you're not visiting history as an exhibition, you're walking through it. as something that simply kept going. And that's what makes this place special. Also, Husum is the county seat of Germany's most northern county. Anything north of this county is Denmark. That quote I mentioned earlier, the great town by the sea, that quote actually stuck and people associate it with Husum. And I gotta say, it doesn't do it justice. This town is actually quite pretty.
Würde ich ja sagen, gehen wir lieber.
A moment ago, the market square was still full of lights, voices and mild wine. And now, this. Schlossgang is one of those streets that quietly reset the mood. The crowd thins out, the noises fade, and Husum slips back into its natural pace. The cobblestones, the narrow houses, the soft winter light, it feels less like moving through a town and more like moving between centuries. At the end of the street, the Schloss for Husum appears almost by accident. No drama, no grand reveal, just suddenly there. On a grey winter day like this, it doesn't look like a palace. It looks like what it really is. A reminder of power, order and permanence in a town shaped far more by wind and water than by kings. And somehow that contrast is exactly what makes this walk feel so Husum. Now, as I'm walking around a very wintry and kind of spooky park near the castle, let me tell you some more about the poet and novelist Theodor Storm, who used to live in this town from 1866 to 1880. And his work is deeply tied to this whole area. And his main novel, his best known novel, Der Schimmelreiter, which basically means the rider of the white horse, tells the story of a man named Hauke Haien, who some centuries ago, became responsible for keeping the area's dikes intact, protecting the people from the powers of the North Sea. Now, he knew that the old dikes wouldn't do the job much longer, and he started constructing a new one to protect the people. However, people didn't quite trust him. He could always be seen riding this white horse, which was weird to them, and also a horse's skeleton had been seen on the seabed at low tide, so word got around that he was kind of riding that resurrected horse, so he was met with a lot of distrust. He kept going, however, and constructed the new dike. But then just before completion of the new dike, another flood caused the old dikes to break, and he had to witness his wife and his daughter drown in the floods, which led to him taking his own life by jumping into the floods as well. After that, his new dike was completed and protected the people for a century to come. Anyway, that story is completely fictional, of course, but it does shine a pretty good light on how rough life at the coast was back then, because these floods that happened here, the one that I mentioned earlier in 1362, that claimed tens of thousands of lives, and there was another one about 300 years later that was equally devastating. And there are eyewitness reports from the later flood that tell stories about whole houses being swept away with everybody inside. And nowadays we're kind of well protected against the powers of the sea, but back then people were absolutely exposed to these brutal powers. And well, you can see it when you look at the coastline of the state of Schleswig-Holstein. It's been pretty much just shaped by flooding. The mainland used to be much larger, and all those islands like Sylt, and there was an island called Strand, which is basically gone now, just a small part is left. Sylt is the same, it used to be much larger. And some parts, some islands in the North Sea used to be part of mainland. And there is the guy. There is one more place I want to check out because the street sign just caught my eye. Yep, the Christmas Museum is actually open all year, except for mid-January to mid-February. I do wonder how many visitors they get in like May. So how was my day trip to Husum? Actually, it's a super nice, pretty town. I enjoyed coming here. It's not grey at all. There's a lot of historic buildings still up, and it's really nice, it's really pretty. I might come back in summer maybe, check it out. See how it's during that time of the year, probably jumping with tourists due to the very close North Sea. But for now I'm slowly making my way back to the train station and start my ride home. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I see you again for the next one. Until then, take care.